Behind the glitz, glamour, and million-dollar smiles of Hollywood's golden age is a shocking truth. 11 famous stars had horrible secrets that no one knew about. You thought these legends were perfect? Change your mind. These stars weren't just acting on screen. They were living their roles off-screen. They had breath that smelled like rotting food, that made their co-stars sick, and secret food caches that would make you gag. What if your idol has a secret habit that is so bad that it could end their career right away? Get ready to find out the truth about Hollywood's dirtiest secrets, starting with the King of Hollywood. Stay tuned, because this will change everything you thought you knew about these celebrities. Clark Gable, the king with catastrophic breath. Clark Gable represented masculine perfection to millions of moviegoers. His commanding screen presence and distinctive grin made him Hollywood royalty. But the actresses who performed romantic scenes with him experienced something entirely different. Breath so foul, it became legendary among industry insiders. Vivien Leigh, his co-star in Gone with the Wind, privately told her assistant that kissing Gable was like embracing decay. She described his mouth as smelling like a cemetery. This wasn't exaggeration or personal dislike. It was a widespread issue that affected multiple productions throughout his career. The problem originated in Gable's 30s, when severe gum disease and dental neglect resulted in the loss of most of his natural teeth. MGM quickly arranged for high-quality dentures, but they couldn't control how Gable maintained them. A set assistant who worked on Mutiny on the Bounty revealed that Gable would remove his dentures between takes and store them haphazardly, sometimes wrapped in a handkerchief behind plants, where they would sit for hours under hot studio lights. This careless treatment created ideal conditions for bacterial growth. Combined with Gable's heavy smoking, drinking habits, and reported indifference to oral hygiene, the situation became what one MGM makeup artist described as catastrophic. The studio developed elaborate strategies to manage their stars' repulsive breath. Directors scheduled kissing scenes for early morning when conditions were least offensive. Script supervisors were assigned to constantly offer mints. Makeup artists created special peppermint solutions to mask the worst moments. Despite these efforts, nothing completely solved the problem. Actresses developed their own survival tactics. Joan Crawford allegedly applied Vicks Vapor Rub under her nose before intimate scenes. Claudette Colbert insisted on turning her head at the last moment so Gable would kiss her cheek instead of her lips. The double standard Hollywood applied to its biggest star was shocking. When a young contract actress complained about Gable's breath to a producer, she was immediately removed from the picture. When established star Loretta Young made the same complaint, the producer simply responded that she would have to deal with it because he was Gable. This contrast between Gable's image as the ultimate romantic lead and the revolting reality of his oral condition became one of Hollywood's cruelest ironies. While women in theaters fantasized about being kissed by the King of Hollywood, women on set actively dreaded the experience. A cameraman who worked on multiple Gable films noted that no throne room should ever smell like that. Marlon Brando, the unwashed genius. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting with his raw, naturalistic performances. But the naturalism extended far beyond his acting technique. According to multiple industry sources, working with Brando meant accepting that he would emit odors described as resembling a dumpster fire. A costume designer who worked on The Godfather explained that while Brando's brilliance was beyond words, his filthiness was equally beyond description. Brando's hygiene issues went far beyond occasionally skipping showers. Multiple sources reported that he would wear the same clothes for days or even weeks, regardless of stains, spills, or sweat accumulation. On the set of Apocalypse Now, director Francis Ford Coppola allegedly had to personally beg Brando to change his shirt after 5 consecutive days of wear in the intense Philippine jungle heat. A longtime associate explained that Brando believed personal comfort trumped everything else. If a shirt felt good, his logic dictated wearing it until it literally disintegrated. But Brando's most disturbing habit involved food. He would hide snacks around sets, often forgetting them for days before rediscovering and consuming them regardless of their condition. Richard Pryor, who worked with Brando in the 1970s, reportedly told friends that Brando smelled like a dead sandwich and that he had witnessed Brando eat things that would make a vulture hesitate. During filming of Last Tango in Paris, a property master discovered half-eaten cheese sandwiches that Brando had stashed behind radiators, under couch cushions, and once inside a hollowed-out book. Some had been there for weeks, growing fuzzy with mold. The property master recalled with evident disgust that Brando would find these forgotten food caches, examine them briefly, shrug, and eat them anyway. His eating habits extended beyond stashed food. Multiple crew members reported seeing Brando eat directly off other people's plates during lunch breaks, sometimes without asking. Others described him reaching into communal food bowls with unwashed hands, often after having been outdoors or handling props. What made these behaviors particularly jarring was the disconnect between Brando's physical presence and his hygienic reality. He could appear dashingly handsome on screen while emitting odors that cleared rooms off camera. A cinematographer who worked with him in the 1960s described him as a walking contradiction, a genius actor and a walking dumpster who would create magic in front of the camera, then pick food off the floor between takes. By the 1970s, some directors built Brando protocols into their production schedules. These included extra ventilation on set, strategic placement of air fresheners, and creating physical distance between him and easily nauseated cast members. Despite these revolting habits, his talent was so extraordinary that people tolerated what would have gotten any lesser actor fired immediately. Howard Hughes sounds. From glamour to grotesque isolation. Howard Hughes began as one of Hollywood's most glamorous figures, a dashing producer, aviator, and ladies' man who dated stars like Katharine Hepburn, Ava Gardner, and Bette Davis. He ended his life as something entirely different, a skeletal recluse sitting naked in darkened hotel rooms, surrounded by jars of his own urine. A former aide who worked for Hughes in the 1960s explained that his deterioration wasn't just mental, but hygienically apocalyptic. The word eccentric doesn't capture the biological horror show his life became. Hughes's descent into filth happened gradually. Then suddenly, by the 1950s, his growing germophobia paradoxically led to increasingly unsanitary conditions. Terrified of contamination from bathrooms, he began urinating in empty milk bottles, which he would meticulously label and store. By the 1960s, the bottle collection had grown to hundreds. A staff member who maintained his Las Vegas penthouse revealed that Hughes had developed a complex cataloging system noting date, time, and color. He believed he could track his health through changes in his urine. The contradictions in his behavior became increasingly bizarre. Despite his fear of germs, Hughes stopped bathing regularly. He would sit for days in the same spot on his bed, naked except for a napkin placed over his genitals, watching movies on repeat while his hair grew matted and his nails lengthened into yellowish claws. A nurse assigned to his care described how his fingernails reached grotesque lengths. The longest grew to almost 3 inches. They curled and thickened, collecting dirt and skin cells underneath, and he refused to let anyone cut them. As his mental state deteriorated, so did his physical appearance. Hughes stopped brushing his teeth entirely. Staff reported that his dental condition became so severe that pieces of teeth would occasionally break off, which he would examine with scientific curiosity before discarding. Perhaps most disturbing was his tissue collection ritual. Hughes would use Kleenex for everything from blowing his nose to cleaning himself, then store the used tissues in neat stacks organized by date of use. These piles would grow until they sometimes reached the ceiling in corners of his room. A security guard assigned to his floor in the Desert Inn Hotel told associates that Hollywood's richest man was living like a raccoon, surrounded by waste, rotting food, and bodily fluids. By the 1970s, Hughes weighed less than 100 pounds. His hair hung in greasy strands past his shoulders, his beard reached his chest, and his untrimmed fingernails and toenails curled around his digits like talons. Hughes's tragic descent reveals the darkest potential outcome of unchecked eccentric behavior, how a man who once personified Hollywood glamour could transform into a figure of grotesque squalor preserved by wealth that ensured no one could force him to change. Montgomery Clift, the sophisticated nose picker. Montgomery Clift was considered one of Hollywood's most sensitive and intelligent actors. His performances in classics like From Here to Eternity and A Place in the Sun revealed depths of emotion few male stars of his era could match. He was also, according to multiple sources, an unabashed nose picker and booger eater who engaged in this behavior even during rehearsals. An assistant director who worked with him in the 1950s recalled that Clift had absolutely no shame about it. He would be running lines, stop mid-sentence, dig for gold, examine what he found, pop it right in his mouth, then continue the dialogue as if nothing had happened. This wasn't occasional behavior or a one-time incident. Makeup artists reported regular cleanup sessions before shooting where they had to deal with the aftermath of his nasal excavations. One even kept special tissues on hand specifically for Monty duty. A veteran makeup artist quipped that they had worked with children, animals, and Montgomery Clift. The children eventually grew up, and the animals could be trained, but Monty never stopped mining for nose gold. What made Clift's habit particularly jarring was the contrast with his sophisticated public image. On screen and in publicity photos, he projected intellectual refinement and poetic sensitivity. Between takes, he displayed the hygiene awareness of a preschooler. After his serious car accident in 1956, which led to increased pain medication and alcohol use, the behavior reportedly intensified. During filming of The Misfits in 1960, director John Huston allegedly had to establish a no-picking rule during actual shooting after a particularly visible dig nearly ruined an otherwise perfect take with Marilyn Monroe. A lighting technician who worked on multiple Clift productions summarized it perfectly. Brilliant on camera, disgusting between takes. You would watch him break your heart with a performance, then turn away in revulsion during the breaks. Paul Lynde, The Secret Beneath the Suit. For millions of Americans in the 1970s, Paul Lynde was the hilarious center square on Hollywood squares, delivering witty double entendres with his distinctive voice and arch delivery. His flamboyant persona pushed boundaries for the era, but always within the confines of what mainstream television would allow. What viewers didn't know was that beneath Lynde's elegant suits lurked an unexpected secret. He was wearing women's lingerie. His longtime housekeeper revealed in a 1990s interview that Paul had the most extensive collection of women's undergarments she had ever seen in her 40 years working in Hollywood. Everything from practical cotton pieces to elaborate French lace ensembles, all in his size and custom made. Unlike some of the more objectively disgusting habits we've discussed, Lynde's wasn't exactly revolting, more unexpected, and, for the era, potentially scandalous. But what makes his story significant is how it functioned as both secret vice and personal comfort mechanism in his high-pressure career. A close friend who knew about Lynde's predilection recalled that he once said it kept him grounded and glamorous. Under the harsh lights of television, dealing with the stress of live broadcasts and hiding his sexuality, those silky items against his skin provided some kind of comfort. Lynde reportedly wore lingerie under his tuxedo while hosting events, during television appearances, and even at formal Hollywood gatherings. The contrast between his public image as television's sarcastic uncle figure and his hidden self-expression created significant psychological strain. A biographer who researched Lynde's complex life noted that audiences laughed at the jokes while he was hiding lace. That contradiction between the public wit and the private struggle eventually contributed to his problems with alcohol and his often bitter outlook. On rare occasions, Lynde's secret nearly became public. During a particularly wild party at his Palm Springs home in the early 1970s, he allegedly jumped into the pool in a drunken moment of liberation, revealing a pink teddy underneath his clothes. Fortunately for his career, the only witnesses were close friends and industry insiders who protected his secret. Tallulah Bankhead, the star who went commando. Tallulah Bankhead was famous for her husky voice, withering wit, and uninhibited personality both on screen and stage. What many don't realize is just how literal that uninhibited quality was. Bankhead proudly and consistently refused to wear underwear throughout her adult life. A costume designer who worked with her in the 1950s explained that Tallulah claimed she had been commando since 1918 and saw absolutely no reason to change. She considered undergarments restrictive to both her body and her spirit. This wasn't just a private eccentricity. Bankhead made sure everyone in her vicinity was aware of her preference through both words and actions. A studio electrician who witnessed Bankhead's casual approach to modesty commented that she was a party on screen and a full show off it. During costume changes, she never bothered with robes or private spaces. She would strip down right on set, giving everyone an unrestricted view while carrying on conversations as if she were fully dressed. Her commando approach created legitimate challenges for directors and cinematographers. Camera angles had to be carefully planned, particularly for scenes involving stairs or movement. Wind machines were strictly controlled. In one infamous incident during a Broadway performance, a theatrical smoke effect caused her dress to billow upward, giving the front row an unintended extra show. After that incident, producers instituted what they called the Tallulah Protocol. A stage manager from the era revealed this included extra weights sewn into hemlines, strategic blocking, and backup plans for wardrobe malfunctions. Unlike some stars who might have been embarrassed by such incidents, Bankhead treated them as amusing anecdotes. When a young stagehand accidentally walked in on her during a partial costume change and froze in embarrassment, she reportedly looked him in the eye and drawled, "What's the matter, darling? Haven't you ever seen a real star before?" Bankhead's refusal to wear underwear wasn't merely about physical comfort. It was a deliberate statement about freedom from convention that aligned with her boundary-pushing personality. In an era of girdles, corsets, and restrictive foundation garments, her choice was almost political. A co-star from her later career recalled that she once told them she refused to be bound by undergarments, by studios, or by society's expectations. Her lack of underwear was just the most visible symbol of her larger resistance to being controlled. Bette Davis, the queen of the spit bucket. Bette Davis dominated Hollywood with her intense performances and distinctive eyes. But on set, she was known for something far less glamorous: her revolting habit of spitting tobacco-stained saliva with abandon and terrible aim. A set decorator who worked on multiple Davis films explained that Davis chain-smoked on every set. They were talking 3, sometimes 4 packs a day. Combined with her fondness for chewing gum and occasionally tobacco, this created what they called a saliva situation that required industrial management. The studio's solution was Davis buckets, small receptacles placed strategically around sets where the star could expel the built-up saliva from her smoking and chewing. The problem? Davis frequently missed. A grip who worked on All About Eve recalled that her performances were fire, and so was the floor around her chair. The area surrounding any Davis sitting position became what crews called the splash zone. No one wanted to walk through it, especially in nice shoes. What made this habit particularly problematic was Davis's imperious attitude about the whole situation. She expected crew members to empty and clean her spit buckets without comment or visible disgust. When one new production assistant gagged while performing this duty, Davis reportedly snapped, "If you can't handle the realities of making pictures, go work in a florist's shop." The habit created genuine tension with co-stars as well. During filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Davis's already strained relationship with Joan Crawford reached new levels of animosity when Davis allegedly spit on the floor near Crawford's mark just before a scene. Crawford, a notorious germaphobe, refused to stand in the designated position, forcing an entire lighting reset. A cinematographer from her later career noted that working with Bette meant accepting certain bodily fluids as part of your day. She was a brilliant artist who treated sets like a spittoon. You dealt with it because she was Bette Davis, but it was genuinely revolting. As Davis aged, her aim apparently worsened while her cigarette consumption increased, creating what one director called a perfect storm of expectoration. By the 1960s, some crew members would place small rugs around her position that could be quickly removed and cleaned between setups. Peter Lorre, the compulsive foot picker. Peter Lorre created some of cinema's most memorable characters, from the child murderer in M to the mysterious Joel Cairo in The Maltese Falcon. His distinctive voice and unsettling gaze made him Hollywood's go-to actor for charming yet sinister roles. What his co-stars dreaded wasn't his villainous screen persona, but his compulsive need to remove his shoes and manipulate his feet, often while reading lines or during breaks in filming. An assistant director who worked with him in the 1940s revealed that Lorre had a ritual before any significant dialogue scene. He would slip off his shoes, peel off his socks, and begin a thorough examination of his feet, picking at calluses, cleaning between toes, sometimes even sniffing his fingers afterward. This wasn't occasional behavior, but a consistent pattern that directors had to schedule around. Humphrey Bogart, after making several films with Lorre, reportedly told director John Huston before The Maltese Falcon began production to just give Peter 5 minutes with his feet before important scenes. It was easier than fighting it. A script supervisor who witnessed Lorre's foot fixation over multiple productions quipped about method fungus. He claimed it helped him concentrate, that physical discomfort distracted from emotional performance. The rest of the crew just tried not to watch. The behavior became so well known that some stars included no foot manipulation by Lorre within visual range clauses in their contracts when working with the actor. Sidney Greenstreet, his frequent co-star, allegedly insisted on having his chair positioned so that Lorre's feet would never be in his line of sight during breaks. An actress who worked with him in the 1950s commented that he was a genius and a fungal hazard. The contrast was startling, this cultured European intellectual with his books and philosophical discussions who couldn't keep his hands off his toes for more than an hour. What made Lorre's habit particularly difficult for others was the casual way he would return to normal activities afterward, handling props, shaking hands, or touching communal objects without washing his hands after extended contact with his feet. Production assistants on Lorre films were often assigned the unofficial duty of trying to place hand sanitizer or its era-appropriate equivalent within easy reach after his foot sessions, though he rarely used it. Judy Garland, the tragic purger. Judy Garland's magnificent voice and emotional performances made her one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. Behind that talent lay a studio-enforced habit so destructive and disgusting that it would eventually help cut her life short. A former MGM makeup artist who worked with Garland during her early years at the studio said they wanted a starlet and broke a girl instead. What they did to that child would be criminal today. From age 13, MGM put Garland on a regimen of diet pills, appetite suppressants, and amphetamines to maintain the thin figure the studio demanded. When these dangerous drugs caused her to eat compulsively, studio executives and her own mother encouraged a horrifying solution: forced vomiting. A studio nurse who witnessed Garland's treatment explained that they didn't call it bulimia then, they called it weight management. They taught her to purge as casually as they taught her to dance. The young star quickly became adept at hiding this behavior even in public settings. During the filming of The Wizard of Oz, when Garland was just 16, she reportedly excused herself to the bathroom after lunch breaks and returned with freshly applied makeup to cover her bloodshot eyes. As she grew older and the cycle of starvation, binging, and purging became entrenched, Garland developed increasingly desperate methods to manage her secret. A wardrobe assistant who worked closely with her in the 1940s revealed that she once threw up into her own purse to avoid halting filming. They were already behind schedule, and she knew another delay would mean more screaming from the director. So when she felt sick from the pills they had given her that morning, she discreetly used her handbag rather than run off set. The purging habit continued long after she left MGM, becoming so ingrained that it persisted throughout her adult life. During her concert years, venue managers were sometimes instructed to place receptacles in strategic locations backstage for Garland's use between songs. A tour manager from her later years recalled that the saddest part was watching her perform Somewhere Over the Rainbow with tears in the audience's eyes, knowing she would be violently ill moments after leaving the stage. The contrast between the magic she created and the physical suffering she endured was heartbreaking. Garland's vomiting became so frequent that it caused serious dental problems, esophageal damage, and contributed to her electrolyte imbalances, all factors in her accidental overdose death at just 47. W.C. Fields, the plant urinator. W.C. Fields made audiences howl with laughter through his misanthropic humor and perfect comic timing. But on sets and at parties, he left hosts and colleagues fuming with a habit so disrespectful it defied belief. He regularly urinated in potted plants. A property master who worked on several of his films said Fields brought deadpan to comedy and dead roots to greenery. His bladder apparently operated on its own schedule, and he decided conventional bathrooms were optional. This wasn't a rare drunken indiscretion, but a regular practice rooted in Fields's peculiar blend of laziness and antisocial behavior. He particularly disliked using public restrooms, claiming they were beneath his dignity. His solution was to find the nearest large potted plant, position himself with his back to the room, and relieve himself while continuing conversations as if nothing unusual was happening. An actress who appeared in two Fields films recalled that the first time you saw it, you thought it must be a bizarre comedy bit. Then you realized he was actually urinating in the director's favorite ficus tree while discussing his contractual terms. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Studio executives and wealthy Hollywood hosts learned to Fields-proof their environments by removing or protecting valuable plants when the comedian was expected. On one film set, the director ordered all real plants replaced with plastic ones after Fields killed an expensive imported palm. A cameraman who witnessed multiple plant watering incidents noted that you would think the smell would have embarrassed him, but he seemed utterly unconcerned. He would zip up, turn around, and continue whatever story he had been telling while everyone pretended not to notice the puddle forming at the base of the plant. The behavior became so associated with Fields that other comedians would sometimes mimic it to mock him. During one industry party, Groucho Marx allegedly followed Fields around, pretending to put small out-of-order signs on plants after Fields had visited them. Fields's plant urination habit aligned perfectly with his misanthropic screen persona, suggesting that the line between his characters and his actual personality was thinner than many realized. The man who made audiences laugh with his contempt for social niceties apparently lived those values when cameras weren't rolling. Carmen Miranda, the Fruit Hat Horror Show. Carmen Miranda dazzled audiences with her energy, musical talent, and most iconically, her elaborate fruit-laden headdresses. What viewers never realized was that these famous accessories created a revolting situation on her head. A mobile ecosystem of rotting fruit, insects, and endless discomfort. A costume assistant who worked with Miranda during her Hollywood years said she sang through it while insects had lunch. Those fruit hats weren't props, they were functioning habitats. Miranda's signature headpieces weren't made with plastic fruit as many assume. For authenticity and visual appeal, they contained real fruits, bananas, oranges, strawberries, grapes, artfully arranged and secured to a base that was then attached to her head. Under hot studio lights, these fruits would begin to ripen rapidly. By midday on long shoot days, they would start to ferment and attract insects. Flies, gnats, fruit flies, and occasionally ants would find their way to the mobile feast perched atop the star's head. A choreographer who worked with Miranda on several films recalled seeing her perform complex dance numbers while tiny flies circled her head like a halo. She would occasionally give a small, discreet shake of her head when something crawled on her scalp, but never missed a step. The weight of these arrangements, sometimes up to 10 pounds, created genuine physical strain. Miranda suffered from regular headaches and neck pain. Yet the studio insisted on increasingly elaborate designs as they became her defining trademark. The practical challenges were considerable. During breaks in filming, Miranda couldn't simply remove the headdress. It required a team to disassemble and then reconstruct it. This meant that even during lunch or extended pauses, she was often stuck with the increasingly ripe arrangement. Miranda reportedly told a concerned makeup artist who noticed insects in her headpiece during a particularly long shooting day, "If the bugs want a party, I give them a dance." Her good humor about the situation belied the genuine discomfort she endured. The fruit hats created other unexpected problems as well. Juice would occasionally drip down her forehead during energetic dance numbers. The weight distribution would shift as fruit settled or partially detached. And the smell, particularly toward the end of long days, could become noticeable to those standing nearby. A sound technician who worked closely with Miranda described how by the final take, you could sometimes catch a whiff of fermentation, like a tiny wine cellar on her head. She covered it with extra perfume, but there was only so much you could do when you were wearing a compost heap as a fashion statement. The reality behind the illusion. These revelations about Hollywood's golden age stars reveal the enormous gap between carefully constructed public images and private realities. The studio system invested tremendous resources in maintaining illusions of perfection, employing armies of publicists, fixers, and handlers to ensure that audiences never learned the truth about their idols. What makes these stories particularly significant is how they humanize figures who have been elevated to almost mythical status. Gable, Bette Davis, Marlon Brando, and the others weren't flawless gods and goddesses. They were human beings with all the disgusting habits, personal struggles, and hygiene failures that come with being human. The studio system's ability to maintain these secrets for decades demonstrates the power structures that defined old Hollywood. Stars who would have been fired from any normal job for their behaviors were protected and enabled because of their box office value. The more money they made, the more their revolting habits were tolerated and managed rather than addressed. For contemporary audiences, these revelations serve as important reminders that the glamour of any era is largely constructed. The Golden Age wasn't actually more elegant or refined. It was simply better at hiding the messy realities of human existence behind carefully controlled publicity machines. These stories also highlight how much the entertainment industry has changed. While modern celebrities certainly have their secrets, the complete control studios once exercised over information would be impossible in today's media environment. Social media, smartphones, and the 24-hour news cycle have made it virtually impossible to maintain the kind of comprehensive secrecy that protected Hollywood's Golden Age stars. The contrast between image and reality in classic Hollywood wasn't just about protecting careers. It was about protecting the entire fantasy that audiences paid to see. Once you knew that Gable's breath could clear a room, that Brando smelled like a dumpster, or that Davis was spitting tobacco juice on set, it became harder to lose yourself in the magic of their performances. Yet despite knowing these disgusting truths, their talent remains undeniable. These revelations don't erase their contributions to cinema. If anything, they make their achievements more remarkable. They created memorable performances and iconic moments despite their personal failings, proving that artistic genius and personal hygiene don't necessarily go hand in hand. The Golden Age of Hollywood will always hold a special place in cinema history. But perhaps it's time to remember it not just for its glamour and sophistication, but for the very human, very flawed individuals who created that glamour, complete with all their disgusting habits, revolting behaviors, and carefully concealed secrets.